And welcome back to Chicago Bulls Insider. Today, we're talking about the most recent NBA draft buzz around the Chicago Bulls. Next, we're going to be talking about free agency as Jonathan Kuminga is linked to the Chicago Bulls again. And so before we go ahead and we jump into that, I first want to remind you to slam dunk on that subscribe button. Just like Modest Vazelis, slam dunks in games. And so in exchange for slamming on that subscribe button, I'm going to give you nothing but daily content around the Chicago Bulls. So make sure that you hit that like, you hit that subscribe, and you join the Chicago Bulls Insider family as we talk nothing but Chicago Bulls basketball. So with that being said, let's go ahead and let's jump into it. And let's start with the latest buzz around the Chicago Bulls heading into the NBA draft. And so if you want to read about this, you can go over to ClutchPoints. This was an article that was posted yesterday, and this is written by Brett Siegel. And so he brings up some interesting points, and I think that these points really make you wonder what the plan might be for the Chicago Bulls. And so let's go ahead and let's jump into point number one, which is mentioned in this article. And so he talks about the fact that the momentum is building for Derik Queen. And then he says that, look, Derik Queen has been linked most to the Chicago Bulls with the 12th pick, yet sources indicate that the Bulls are still evaluating a few other names in this spot to provide more athleticism and length to their roster. And so some of the names that are mentioned after that, he talks about Jaeger Demum. He talks about also to Carter Bryant, and then Asa Newell are coming up in conversations for the Chicago Bulls. And so let's start with Derik Queen. And so, look, I like Derik Queen a lot. We've done a NBA draft prospect video about him. You're looking at a player that averaged 16.5 points a game, nine rebounds a game, so 9 even with the rebounds. And I just love the fact that he's shooting 76.6% from the free throw line. And so you're not just going to foul him. He's going to make those free throws and make you pay, shooting 52.6 from the field. Not the greatest three-point shooter right now at 20% from downtown, but he is willing to do so. And so, look, I like him a lot. And I had a player comparison of just an Alperen Şengün type of player. I really feel like that he can be that type of player. And I also feel like that he can be Elton Brand as well. And so he reminds me of Elton Brand. A former player for the Chicago Bulls, was the co-rookie of the year with Steve Francis back in the day. And so, look, I would love to see the Bulls go with him at 6'9". I think that he's going to provide what you want up front in the front court. It's going to be the question of, can he run with Josh Giddey and also to Coby White in those guards? And I think that he can. I think that this is a guy that a lot of people are going to be sleeping on him, but I think that once you get him in the building, nobody's going to work any harder. And I think that this guy is going to show that he certainly belongs. And so I would love the Chicago Bulls to take him. I think that he definitely has that mentality where he looks like he will run through the wall, for the team. And I think that that's something that this team needs, because it's not just about what they can do from a stat standpoint, but we're talking about changing the identity of the Chicago Bulls to get them into a position to where they're winning again. And I think it does start with a player like Derik Queen. And so I like the fact that he is being mentioned again and the momentum is building, because the last thing we heard was that really just the pre-draft stuff, it didn't go as well as some anticipated. And that maybe was keeping teams away from him. And so I'm just glad to see that the Chicago Bulls are linked to him once more. And so, with that being said, as far as what's going on with him, and just if the Bulls were to stay in this position right now, I think that, players like Asa Newell still could be available for the Chicago Bulls. I think that also too, Thomas Sorber could be available. And I even think that Kaman Malawach could be available as well. And so the talented center out of Duke. And so I think that the Bulls are in a prime spot if they do not move up or down in the upcoming NBA draft, which leads us to the next point here. And it just really makes us wonder about the plan here for the Chicago Bulls, as I just talked about moving up or down. And so in that same article, the Bulls are actually linked to Ace Bailey, as you can see here on the screen, which I find very, very interesting, because Ace Bailey is a player that some slate to go number 3. I mean, I think it would be interesting to see if he were to fall down past number 3. But here's what he says in this article, where he says that multiple sources have relayed that the Chicago Bulls are exploring the possibility of moving up in this year's draft should Bailey be passed on by the Sixers or another team that trades up with the 3rd pick. It also says, too, that how the Bulls could possibly move up from the 12th pick to have a chance at selecting Bailey would be the ultimate question should the Rutgers star fall in the top 5. And then it says right here that none of the 3 rebuilding teams behind the Sixers, so the Hornets, you got the Jazz, and then also to the Wizards, would hold much interest in anything Chicago has to offer except for draft compensation in future years. It's tough to see a Bailey Bulls scenario. All right. So I love the fact that Brett Siegel keeps it real with that, but I do find it interesting that the Bulls have some interest if Ace Bailey does slip past those first couple picks, or at least past the 76ers, I should say. And so I love this if Ace Bailey were there and the Bulls were somehow to find a way to get him. A prior video, I talked about how I really liked Ace Bailey, and he would be a player that I would love to see the Bulls go out there and get, because when you look at the numbers for Ace Bailey and the way that he scores, I think that the upside is absolutely there for him. Averaged 17.6 points per game last year, 1.3 blocks, only 1.3 with the assists, but he had 7.2 rebounds per game, shot 69.2 from the free throw line, 34.6 from downtown, and from the field, 46% even. But I just love the way that he scored. And when you're talking about just bringing punch to your front court, he certainly would be a splash that the Bulls need. The question is, how is AK would AK even consider this? Because I don't think that this is an AK type of move. Because when you look at this front office, I mean, it just hasn't shown that it would take a big swing like that. And I think it certainly would be a huge swing if they were to do that. And I think that if the Bulls were to do something like that, I think that, man, the Bulls were certainly trending in the right direction if they're willing to do that, because that means that the pieces that we've been talking about that the Bulls could come off of, I think that those would definitely be in play. And I think that you would see a lot of movement from the Chicago Bulls in a hurry. But like the article mentioned, I just don't see any realistic possibility where the Chicago Bulls would go up and get Ace Bailey. But I do love the thinking if that is what is going on in the building. And so next, I wanted to go ahead and jump into the most recent rumor that we're hearing around Jonathan Kuminga, as Jonathan Kuminga is linked to the Chicago Bulls yet again. And so if you want to go over to HoopsHype, you can read about this. This article also came out yesterday, and this is written by Michael Scotto. And within this article, look, it sounds like that the Chicago Bulls, and then also too, you have the Miami Heat could be interested here in Jonathan Kuminga, as you see. And so the first thing that he points out, and just paraphrasing this too as well, is that looks like that he's looking for an expanded and a consistent role moving forward, as he's saying his sources told HoopsHype there. And then next, he talks about just Miami and then the Chicago Bulls, the two teams to monitor in a sign and trade. Says right there at the bottom, the Warriors have also not ruled out the possibility of retaining Kuminga, sources said, which we talked about that before. And then lastly, talking about the Golden State Warriors and the link that they had to the Chicago Bulls and going after Vooch, who has a $21.48 million contract, which is expiring. And then I love the fact that they throw out the numbers here, because Vooch absolutely shot the basketball well last season. You see 17.2 points per points career average, and then also to 40.2 from downtown last season, had 10.5 rebounds a game for his career as well. And this is something that the Golden State Warriors would be interested in. And so, look, I'm right there with him, I do think that there is still a ton of interest here for Jonathan Kuminga to be moved over to the Chicago Bulls. And when you're talking about going younger, which he says there at the end of the article, this is a player that turns 23 in October and really does fit the timeline of the Chicago Bulls. And so, look, I would love it if the Chicago Bulls were to go out and get Jonathan Kuminga. I think in a sign and trade, it is going to take a little bit more than just the Golden State Warriors and the Chicago Bulls. So I think that there has to be another team involved, and there might be another player involved too as well. I don't think it's going to be as simple as just Vooch from the Chicago Bulls. I think another piece would have to move there as well. But when you look at Jonathan Kuminga, I mean, you're looking at a player that has championship experience. You're looking at a player that has played with the best shooter, or is still playing with the best shooter because he hasn't moved yet from the team, but playing with Steph Curry, who's the best shooter here of all time in the NBA. And so, he's got a ton of experience working with him. And then also, too, just what he's gotten from Jimmy Butler over this last season and Draymond Green and Steve Kerr. I think that he's going to bring a lot to the Chicago Bulls if they were to trade for him. And I love his numbers because even with him in that type of situation that he had last season with his role very much being up and down, you're looking at a player that had some solid numbers because at 15.3 points a game, 4.6 rebounds, 2.2 assists, shot 66.8% from the free throw line. I don't love that. 30.5 from downtown for his career, 33.2 and 45.4% from his field. And so, or from the field, excuse me. And so I think that the upside is there when you see the numbers. I think for him, this is a guy that you can give him the ball and say, go get a bucket. He can definitely do that. The question for Jonathan Kuminga is, can he play off the ball? Because coming over to the Chicago Bulls, he's going to have to play off the ball with Josh Giddey, with Coby White, who I presume is still going to be here. Let's see what happens around draft night, or if he's moved before the season starts or whatnot. But I'm assuming that the Bulls are going to run it back with their backcourt here. And so those guys are certainly going to have the ball in their hands. And then I think, too, when you look at Matas Buzelis, I think he's set to take another step forward this season. And I think that last season, Billy Donovan didn't draw up any plays for him. I could see that there's going to be a lot more activity towards getting Matas Buzelis the ball in his hands. And so that he's going to have a higher usage rate. And so now that means that Jonathan Kuminga, yes, he's going to get the usage rate with the ball in his hands, but he's also going to have to figure it out without the ball in his hands. And so, like I said before, I don't like the fact that if he gets fouled, he's not a very strong foul shooter at this point in time. The three-point shot is something that you would have to see go up as well, because this offense is geared to knocking down shots. But make no mistake about it, he doesn't just have to sit out there and just, shoot up a whole bunch of three-point balls or anything like that. Like, he could still get to the rim and things like that. But at times, the defense is going to put him out there in situations where they're going to dare him to make those shots. And so he's going to have to be able to make the defense pay. And so you want to see the percentages go up. But what he brings as far as just his experience, the mentality and everything like that, it would definitely be a huge piece for this team to push forward in the right direction, because just like I just said with Derik Queen, it's got to be more than just the stats. You need players in here who are winners, because you're going to need to change the culture of this team. And so he's definitely a player that could do so. And I love the fact that he is a young player that fits the timeline here. And so anyway, you guys let me know in the comments here. Do you think that the Chicago Bulls should take a chance with Jonathan Kuminga? I think that this would be a very nice swing in free agency. And I think it's a player that, to be honest with you, I don't see him failing with the Chicago Bulls. I got a good feeling here that if Jonathan Kuminga got to the Bulls, it would be a good look. Next, you guys let me know what you guys are thinking about this draft intel here that we're hearing, that the Bulls could have some interest in moving up to get Ace Bailey if he falls past the 76ers. Once again, you can read this in HoopsHype, just bringing, or not HoopsHype, excuse me, in ClutchPoints if you want to read about that. So you guys let me know about that if you are just interested in the Bulls moving up for Ace Bailey. And lastly, let me know too what you guys are thinking about this. This was mentioned in that same ClutchPoints article where he's saying the momentum is building up for Derik Queen. And so I like Derik Queen a lot. I think that he would be a solid player. And I do think the draft buzz and just really, his stock kind of going up and down like that, I do think that he's going to come in super motivated, which is why I think that it would actually work out for the Chicago Bulls. And so it looks like it's wide open. A lot of players that have been linked to the Bulls could be there at pick 12. Do they decide to move up and then go for an Ace Bailey? Could they possibly move down and get some more draft picks? It all could be on the table. We've never seen this front office be this aggressive. Maybe things are changing. But so, guys, let me know what you guys are thinking in the comments. And as we always say, go Bulls. And I will see you on the next one. All right, peace.